This is The Crime Business. A series that gives you the who's who and the what's what of Britain's notorious criminal underworld. We're going to bring you close to some of the most formidable faces. Are you ready? In the crime business, if you want to send a message, use one of these. Or one of these. If you want to scare the shit out of somebody, you're gonna need a heavy.
In the crime business, the heavy is the muscle, employed by criminal decision makers to do their dirty work. The heavies are always up to their bull-like necks in ultra-violence.
Violence is very important in organised crime, so the heavy is very important. In some cases, the whole structure relies upon him.
They're frontline troops, and sometimes they're expendable. Coming up, the role of the heavy is entry-level, but can take people deep into violent crime. That's the story when we meet the enforcer who terrified Glasgow.
So what I would say is I was good at meting out violence.
And the heavy who came close to death.
The old fucking weapons inspectors had had a field day at my ass, do you know what I mean?
Up to the 80s, the heavy worked in extortion and protection rackets. These were stereotypically brick shithouse blokes who would wreck your face or your shop if you didn't make it with the regular installments.
They're meant to deal with people with threats of violence.
Violence is used to make the wheels of illegal commerce go around.
They are sent out to do a message, and they do it to the best of their ability, as hard as they can and ruthless as they can.
This is the requirements, pay up or we'll come back and visit you.
Since the 90s, the role of the heavy has altered. Drugs means guns, and the 46% UK hike in handgun offences says the modern heavy is both armed and prepared to pull the trigger.
I was spending more money on weapons than I was on food.
There is a need for these people within the criminal business. If you owe me 10 grand for the supply of drugs, we can't go to the police to sort it out. We can't go to the local ombudsman or the small claims court.
As a lower-level employee, the risks are enormous.
It was a high-risk occupation. They end up getting killed.
It's fucking nonsense. They're all in their graves and for nothing.
If you get caught, crimes involving violence attract severe sentences, from 18 months for GBH, 14 years for extortion, and mandatory life sentences for murder. But get it right, get in with the right firm or drugs gang, and you could share in the spoils with your cut of drugs activity reaching into the hundreds of thousands.
If you're willing to take the risk, the rewards are absolutely enormous, far greater for most people than the rewards that are available in the straight world.
For the heavy, putting their muscle about can be a route into the main line of crime, as Bernard O'Mahony discovered when he found himself up to his neck and out of his depth in a whole range of nasties. Violence on club doors, drugs, and revenge killings.
I'd always been in trouble all my life, really. My whole childhood is a blur of violence and misery, really. Even as young as primary school age, I'd been given weapons to take to school.
After teenage trouble with the police, Bernard went into the army, but did it his way.
When we were in Northern Ireland, we were meant to approach cars and say, "Good evening, sir, may I see your licence?" And you were usually told to fuck off or threatened or, burn in hell or something. The only way to combat violence is, sadly, with violence. The tactics I use in Ireland were not liked by the locals or a lot of the soldiers I work with.
Like many heavies, Bernard's route into crime began with the job of bouncer.
I would always wanted to be one, I'd spoke to the careers officer and it seemed like a good job. Load of bollocks. No one wants to be a doorman, only these clowns who pump themselves with steroids and go jumping around fucking gymnasiums like trap budgie guys, do you know what I mean?
Bernard worked at one of Basildon's most notorious nightclubs, Raquel's, commonly known as
a shithole.
This is business.
Inevitably, there was violence.
It was sort of Sharon and Tracy, and then Essex White Van Man, and they were either trying to fuck each other or fight each other, and they're all getting drunk and tottering round on stiletto wheels. You know, them little firms all come down and they don't want to pay or start, then you just fuck them off, do you know what I mean? And a lot of people got hurt then, several people got stabbed there, do you know what I mean, by doormen. You know, we had a wide range of weapons. I mean, the favourite one in Essex at the time was industrial ammonia. It's fucking lethal. It burns your skin and flesh and everything. They'd have like family size fairy liquid bottles of that, and knives. Everyone had knives. We'd have bats and obviously guns in the club. One was in the foyer and one was upstairs in the main dance hall place.
Bernard became enmeshed in an escalating world of weapons and retribution. Confrontations were common and were dragging him into violent crime. A typical incident involved one of his friends, Jason Draper.
Jason had a very good reputation in Basildon, if not one of the best reputations in Basildon. When I say best, I don't mean, you know, he'd come round and cut your lawn, he'd come round and cut your fucking throat, do you know what I mean?
A dispute at the club led to a face-off.
The big thing round Basildon was he was going to kill me, I was going to kill him, and blah, blah, blah.
Reputation is everything within the criminal fraternity, and particularly a reputation for violence is very, very important.
Reputation always has and always will be the key to absolutely everything. Well, without it, you're nothing in the underworld, because people will just take advantage of you. They'll try and rip you off.
I thought, right, it's no good giving this man an hiding, because if I give him an hiding, he's only going to come back more angry. I reached the decision that I had to kill him, you know what I mean, because there was no other thing to do, there was nothing else I could do. We've all gone to the door, and because it was Bank Holiday Monday, it was like a ticket-only thing. So the doorman said, sorry fellas, you can't come in. The doormen were holding me because I had the machete. Eventually I got 3 of them because they didn't, you know, fancy being hurt with this machete, because I was quite annoyed, to say the least. My mate squirted him with the ammonia, and he just turned and run blind through the pub. I hit him once round the back of the head with it, and once across the back, but I couldn't get him properly with it. And thank God I never did, you know, looking back now, because like I say, I like the old boy, you know what I mean, but it was just the way things fucking were in them days.
And you'd have killed him? And
100%.
But then that's like a life sentence over, you know, a little bit of a squabble.
And that's what a lot of people get life sentences for nothing.
Bernard's door work had taken him into the grey area where bouncing and crime overlap. But the club situation was changing, and he would be propelled into much darker areas of the crime business.
People realised that nightclubs would make much more money when there was ecstasy free flowing, and the whole rave scene just exploded.
Because you had to have people going into the clubs to sell stuff, the only way they could get in was by getting past the bouncers. So very quickly you had a situation built up where bouncers would be paid money to allow certain dealers in.
The old style muscle has had to adapt. They always do. I mean, every marketplace adapts, whether it's legitimate or illegitimate, and the criminal marketplace has adapted. So this is a way that old-fashioned legitimate muscle becomes illegitimate, but becomes quite a money maker.
Well, we're not going to let the dealers in and sell drugs. We're going to let the dealers in so long as they sell our drugs and give us rent as well.
But it does mean actually having connections with what we would call organised crime. You know, that's who's providing the drugs, that's who's dealing with the drugs, and if you're connected to that, you're part of quite a serious network.
Bernard started operating as a heavy with organised villains like Tony Tucker. Tucker and his crew had gone from club doors to full-time drug dealing. Bernard had entered big-time drugs crime.
The gangsters wanted to start taking cocaine. The more cocaine they took, the more fucking paranoid and violent they became. And where there's money, there's violence, and where there's violence, there's fucking death. And that was the end result of rackets, you know. They started doing silly things like robbing other drug dealers. These people, the sort of people you want to upset, told them there was a shipment of cocaine coming in. Tony Tucker met me and asked me to be involved, because when this shipment landed, it wasn't going to be paid for, they were going to rob it. Asked me to drive for them. And I refused because I didn't think it was a good idea to rob that amount of cocaine from people flying it in on a plane, because obviously serious people.
Tucker and 2 of his crew drove to a field at night for what they thought was the drugs drop, and were massacred as they sat in their Range Rover.
Detectives say they're keeping an open mind, but believe the killings have all the hallmarks of a gangland murder.
He shot the driver, Craig Rolfe, behind the ear, which blew a hole through his nose, shot Tony Tucker there in the face, which blew his jaw and his teeth. He turned the gun to Pat Tate, who was sitting in the back, and he shot him in the side. He slumped forward, still alive, just screamed. Shot him in the neck there, Tony again in the lower jaw there. There was a message in it, don't fuck with us, because they didn't just shoot them fellas, they blew them apart, do you know what I mean?
Bernard the Heavy had had a lucky escape from the most extreme result of the crime business he was in.
Can happen like that. It's a short journey, really. 5-year period going from earning £40 a night to being blown to pieces down a lane for £500,000 worth of drugs.
Coming up, the story of Lenny McLean, the daddy of the Heavies.
One look could settle trouble. And if you wanted to pursue it further than that, then trouble is what you'd get.
And we meet Paul Ferris, the Glasgow enforcer with a ferocious reputation.
Pay up or Paul come back to visit you. And then you do the old Cell of Black routine, surprise, surprise.